Hi, I'm Sophia Galati, and I'm presenting on Windsor Crossing, a local church here in St. Louis. My presentation is going to outline exactly how a church can be defined according to multiple definitions. I'll give a brief background on Windsor, including the denomination it associates with, location, and the meaning behind the name of the church, Windsor Crossing. I'll outline the values that Windsor uses as guidelines to operate their place of business, and I'll also give a brief SWOT analysis of specifically Windsor Crossing and churches in general. Finally, I'll be proposing a hypothetical situation of the church that they could realistically face. I'll address the ways in which the church would handle it, and then from an organizational behavior standpoint, how the book would suggest that the business would handle it. So Windsor is also called the Crossing, and it does not affiliate with a specific denomination. It is a member of the Willow Creek Association and as well as the Advent Conspiracy. They were a founding member. All that is an outreach program to reinstill the meaning of Christmas, to use Christmas as a way to celebrate the birth of Jesus, and things like that. So let me define why Windsor is considered the Crossing, or why they call themselves the Crossing. The Crossing helps depict the vision the church has been called to carry out. This was a pretty hard paper to write without interjecting personal opinion and kind of where to define and draw the line between the view of the church and coming from the standpoint of an organizational behavior student writing this paper. So I had a lot of trouble using terminology and things like that. So when I say called to carry out, that's kind of church talk. But regardless, the crossing can be found in the Bible. The Jeremiah 6:16 is a verse that says, "Stand at the crossing and consider where your lives are heading." So this is the verse that Windsor kind of bases their whole church around. And with this verse, they outline 3 E's to help define the vision that they would like to carry out for their church. So that's explore, experience, and express. And Windsor's ultimate goal is to attain harmony in the church by being united in purpose, and their values are based on the original people, the original members of the church or leaders that started Windsor. They're biblically rooted in Scripture, and they base their guidelines off of verses from the Bible. Just to go a little further into those values, the values include the Bible, of course, God, salvation, Jesus, the Christian life, human destiny, faith, and practice. So again, these are the values that the church uses as guidelines to run their business. A little atypical of business in general, or the business the way we think of it. So just a little more detail about Windsor. There's 3 locations, one main campus that's located in Chesterfield, and then 2 virtual campuses, one in Fenton, Missouri, and then one in Mid Rivers, so not too far from Lindenwood's main campus. I'd like to go just a little bit into the strengths of Windsor, as well as churches in general. They have a really great, typically, churches have a really great family or body of members. This helps with community outreach programs and any volunteer work, and just churches have a good following of people, and that kind of leads into the support system. Just if there's a problem that arises, the church can usually depend on their members to step up and rise to the occasion. I had an email interview with one of the pastors at Windsor, and asked him just a few SWOT questions. They were really busy. I guess some new projects were developing and things like that, so most of the pastors were busy or occupied at the time, but he squeezed in a few minutes to answer my questions via email. And I asked him what were some of the strengths of Windsor and what he felt like were their biggest assets, and he said by far the members of the church as well as the leaders and the employees. He said they have a great culture, and on their website there's a frequently asked questions kind of section for people who are looking to be hired onto their staff, and on there it describes their culture with 5 C's: competency, chemistry, character, and creativity, and then calling. So all those interlinked together is what makes up the body of their employees. And each of those, I guess, descriptions creates the culture with Windsor's church. Some of the weaknesses that Windsor and churches face in general: leadership struggles. Religion in general can be interpretive, and it's hard to find a group of people who all agree 100% of the time. And so in general, leadership can be a problem within a church, as well as financial dependency. Churches rely on tithes and offerings, which is money that the members offer up to the church, and they're a non-for-profit organization. So without a strong body of members, they're just not going to financially, be reliable. And a lot of times within the church, like I mentioned before, there's community outreach programs and programs to keep members actively involved and things like that require, a substantial amount of money. Not to mention all of the equipment. There's stage, there's chairs, there's a lot of things that go as far as overhead into a church. So finances tend to be a problem area for churches. Moving on to opportunities. I've mentioned outreach programs a few times. Churches, their biggest, way to get into the community is to just develop programs to reach to certain populations. So that could be forming kids' sports leagues, that could be developing women's events, maybe luncheons for businessmen and women, family events, and then just community outreach programs in general. So whatever the surrounding community might need, or food drives or clothing drives or things like that, are all opportunities for Windsor to make a name for themselves and just kind of infiltrate the lives of the people around them. So let's talk about some threats. Obviously there's always competition. There's churches everywhere in St. Louis. There's a few miles down from Windsor, there's a 2,000 plus member church, but they don't seem to be deterred, and they feel that they're fulfilling their vision and doing what God called them to do, and filling out their mission. Another threat is maintaining a good rapport with the surrounding community. So, churches are often fighting to defend their beliefs, and this is usually within politics. Democrats versus Republicans. A Christian Democrat may come against a Republican Democrat. A Christian Democrat may come against a Christian Republican and say that they're all about the money and they don't really care about the impoverished people, where the Republican may rebuke and say, you're pro-choice, and that's not biblically rooted. So a lot of judgment gets passed, and that kind of reflects back onto the church, and they're constantly fighting people who speak out and defend what they believe. So that's a pretty hot topic of tension, as well as homosexuality. Recently, the Chick-fil-A restaurant had a huge controversy, and although it's not a church, they do claim Christian values, and they are rooted biblically, and they're being harassed for standing up and defending how they base and run their business. This is a pretty common topic among just a common topic, really, whether or not the church views homosexuals as if they pass judgment on them, and if that group of people feels neglected by the church, or if they're being judged and things like that. So it's pretty hard for a church to maintain its beliefs and not offend people at the same time. So we were asked to define a problem that a church might face, or whatever organization we were working with, and mine just happened to be the church. So I went ahead and defined a hypothetical situation, and came about it from two ways: how a church would handle it, and then how an organizational behavior student would handle the problem. So let's say that there's 5 members of the church who are working together to develop one of those community outreach programs that we were speaking about earlier. The church, if they were, going to handle any type of problem, they're going to base all of their decisions and things like that on the Bible, and exactly, there's verses for different types of things and how people should act, and it will be all biblically rooted. From an organizational behavior standpoint, let's just go back and reiterate the fact that Windsor invites creative people for their staff. They want, people who are willing to think outside the box and reach for new ideas, and really develop plans to continue to reach out to the people around them. So with that being said, suppose that there's 5 people working together on this program, and each person that comes together is obviously going to have a difference of opinion when it comes to what they want to do or how they want to carry it out. From an organizational standpoint, the best situation would be to go ahead and allow everyone to speak their mind and work together, because using a group situation there's benefits to that. There's more resources to pull from, more ideas, more people just work together, and ideas flow between the group. The negative side is some people may not agree with everyone else, or every once in a while there's like domination by one person of the group, and that's never great. And then the amount of time that's required, because it takes a little bit longer to make group decisions. But with all that being said, I would assume that in a church group of individuals, employees, that they could come to a relatively good decision that everyone agreed on, and that would be the 2/3 majority wins rules, where if most people are on board with the program, then it's best to just go ahead and carry out that situation, and hopefully everyone in the end is pretty happy. A way to decide whether or not the program was successful for the employees, for the peers, for the people who are involved with the community outreach program, it would be 360-degree feedback would be a way to check that out. So that allows members of the group to evaluate each other. That allows maybe the manager or whoever is overseeing that group to evaluate them as far as how they work together and things like that. And then, allow the people who are participating in the program to evaluate not just the program, but maybe things that they could do differently or work together better. So 360-degree feedback just allows for ultimate, room for improvement, things that they did well. All of that is fair game in the 360-degree feedback. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you are now educated on Windsor Crossing. Thank you.